welcome you. We're going deep today. Bob Camblin, maybe you've heard the name, maybe not. But in the art world, he's kind of a huge deal, widely recognized, but also, well, a bit of an enigma.
That's right. His art, I mean, thousands of pieces are out there, scattered all over. People want them, they're sought after. But Camblin himself, he always seemed to prefer, a certain distance.
So what are we trying to do today in our deep dive? I mean, what's the point?
The goal is to understand Camblin, or at least get a little closer. His artistic philosophy, how he saw enlightenment, that kind of thing. We've got a few sources we're going to pull from. His own quotes, which are really fascinating, a biography that gives us the timeline of his life and career, and then some interpretations of his art, especially a painting called First Glimpse of the Ox. Oh, and his book Zen and the Art of Enlightenment. It's a lot to unpack, but it's a really interesting mix.
Different perspectives, different pieces of the puzzle. Okay, let's start with Camblin's own words. I came across this quote, and it really stuck with me. Fortunately, some things remain forever, or another 10 years perhaps. What do you make of that?
There's a lot there, You've got that desire for things to last, that human need for permanence, but then right away he undercuts it with this very matter-of-fact, almost funny recognition of how time just moves on. Impermanence. It's a big theme for him.
It is. And then you find all these little observations, like haikus almost. 3 cottonwood trees, dense cluster of new branches, now with them gone. Look, simple, but it really puts you there, doesn't it?
And he was into haiku, into haiga too. That's haiku in the drawing, for you who are wondering.
Yeah.
So these little moments, these sensory details, they're more than just descriptions. They're loaded with meaning.
Oh, and speaking of loaded with meaning, there's this one from Salt Air, summer of '67. As they approached, the memory of songs and music stopped at the moment the texture of its decay became visible to them. Sad how we all aged at that moment in time. It's like a punch in the gut, but also beautiful.
It is. Linking sensory experience to, well, mortality really makes you think.
Okay, here's where we get into some of Camblin's core philosophy, I think. He says, look into the atom, you get what you need. Look into magic, and you get what you need. Philosophy and art are in both. And then this. I will stick with common sense and try for the perfectly average view of the universe. I think that will let me enjoy miracles on both sides of science and magic and the nuances of the smear between the whiteness and the blackness, and hope that I can be around when the two meet in the near future and we have an intensely bright gray. This guy was deep.
He was. And he's connecting things here that people usually keep separate. Science and magic, reason and intuition. He's looking for this perfectly average view, but it's not average in the sense of being dull or mediocre. It's about finding that point where opposites meet, where they balance out, where they can both exist and inform each other. It's a much bigger, more holistic way of seeing the world,
And then, out of nowhere, he drops this. The sixth sense is to be, without a doubt, senza dubio. No doubt. Not what I expected.
Right. The sixth sense, we think of, I don't know, ESP or something. But for him, it's about certainty, absolute conviction. It's about belief, actually.
Which reminds me of this. Bright day and I soar. How cruel. That my soul is attached to this earth and yet that longing for something beyond, but also that tether to the physical world.
Very human, that tension. We all feel it, I think. That wanting to transcend, but also being grounded here.
Then he says, I cannot tell a lie to myself.
Yeah.
For very long. Camblin, 1974. Find something in nature that completes you and then surrender. That last part, the surrender, that's where it's at.
It is. You find that connection in nature, that thing that resonates, and then you let go. You trust in the natural order. It's about letting go of control, really. But first, you got to be honest with yourself. That's the foundation.
And then he links that to action. The light is all you need. The end is to evolve by doing the best you can. The means is to amplify what you're doing and believe.
It's about taking responsibility for your own growth, your own evolution. It's not passive. You have to do the work, and you have to believe in what you're doing.
He's got these little phrases too, like Zen koans almost.
Yeah.
In the balance, patience, and yet. Freedom again, and yet. In silence. What's going on there?
It's like he's capturing these fleeting thoughts, these internal struggles, that and yet is like this constant turning point, this recognition that things are never simple, that there are always these opposing forces at play.
On art, he says, art is not just images. Art for art's sake has become art for life's sake, or art for my sake, or art for survival's sake. That's a big statement.
It is. He's saying art has to have a purpose, a real impact on life. It's not just something to look at, to admire for its own sake. It has to connect to the human experience.
This one's a head-scratcher. Step off the train of thought. Define the power that is no power. To do the work that is not work. To laugh the true laugh. Bending is not bowing. So much going on there.
It's about letting go of that linear thinking, that need to control everything. He's talking about a different way of being, a different way of creating. It's about finding that effortless flow, that genuine joy that comes from letting go of your ego, your need to be right.
Another one with strong imagery. Balancing and being for and against. We missed the clouds and for a moment regretted it. Then as lightning, the mind ripped out in flashes of variations to reach the still pond.
Wow. That image of the lightning and then the still pond, it's so powerful. It's like those sudden bursts of insight that come when you can hold opposing ideas in your mind at the same time. That clash that leads to clarity.
Straightforward advice here.
Yeah.
When you think, don't act. When you act, don't think. Be present, basically.
Exactly. Be fully present in whatever you're doing. Don't overthink it. Don't let your emotions run wild. Just be.
This is kind of funny. We talked of changing the world. He listened, then took 21 cents from his coin purse to pay for his coffee and left.
It's a good reminder, isn't it? Sometimes the grand gestures are less important than just taking care of the small things, the everyday realities.
His descriptions are amazing. The cosmos waves as me with tree leaves, sun-heated air moves across the electrons of my skin. Sunlight reflects those greens. First, white, then yellow-green, and in deep shadows blue. He was really tuned in to the natural world.
He was, and he saw connections everywhere between himself, nature, the universe. He even had this tower series of art, like an observatory almost, where he'd just observe and interpret the world around him.
And these little gems. There's one joy that exceeds all other, and that's all I'll say. And not a leaf moves, and yet we all feel the cool breeze.
It's like he's pointing to these profound truths, but he's not spelling them out for you. You have to feel them, to intuit them.
Clearly, he preferred art to arguing. Much better than arguing is to look at my watercolor palette.
He was a visual thinker, for sure. For him, art was the most direct, the most honest form of communication.
On perception, he says. White is light. Black is absence of light. But people are seen. Well, that's enough about me, Mother Nature. Let's talk about you. What did you think of my last picture? That's so playful.
He's blurring the lines between himself and nature, almost having a conversation with it. It's a kind of humility, a recognition that he's not separate from the world around him.
This gives you an idea of how his mind worked. 5 thoughts crashed at South Blueveed and Mandel, just these random fragments.
The creative mind, always making connections, seeing patterns.
On arguments, when you end an argument with a pessimist, you say, you're absolutely right. With an optimist, you say, it's a banana.
Hmm.
And then this. As people move away from us, do they diminish in our eyes? Or mind? Or relativity?
Practical advice with a dose of humor, and then a question about how our perceptions change with distance. Really thought-provoking.
Oh, the irony. My attempts to stop arguing created an argument.
Happens all the time, doesn't it? You try to avoid something, and you end up creating it.
On communication. If you argue or if you agree, you may learn, but you do not communicate.
True communication is more than just exchanging words. It's about understanding, about connecting on a deeper level.
This is a powerful metaphor. The gate stays open, the fence is broken. He keeps searching, but does not know the size of his quarry. Yet he has faith. He looks in all directions, if he could only see all around, all at once.
That's the spiritual quest, isn't it? The searching, the not knowing, the faith that keeps you going, and the desire to see everything all at once.
On societal change. Revolution leads to changes. Evolution is change. The first will be man's a misunderstanding. The second is understanding. The balance will be found in our minds. Individually now, perhaps collectively later.
Revolution, he's saying, is often disruptive, chaotic. Evolution is slower, more gradual, more about individual understanding leading to collective change.
A classic. You never miss the water until the wells run dry.
It's true, though. We take so much for granted until it's gone.
Another nature observation. 6 starlings sitting among broken branches. Look, no buds are growing.
A stark image, the barrenness, but maybe also a hint of renewal, of a new cycle beginning.
Every day the clouds circle our tower as if we again were the intruders. Perspective shift.
We think of ourselves as so central, but nature just keeps moving on, indifferent to our presence.
There, beneath those rocks, poor fish, trapped by the changing tides, so much like us.
That feeling of being at the mercy of forces beyond our control. We all feel it sometimes.
A little whimsy. It wouldn't be so bad to come back as a fly if you knew your body would shine in the sun that way.
Just a fleeting thought, a little bit of fun, but maybe also a reminder to appreciate the beauty in the small things.
Okay, ready for a rapid-fire round of imagery. Darning needles sew shimmering tapestries of blue, green, and white bands, bleached, textured, and white, to taste in sight. Pray ever, avoid the lamp fate. Canvas rectangle, summer light, calligraphy, mystic incomplete. Eater of Christians, chimera Byzantium, warm, cold children's chair. So much going on.
It's like a kaleidoscope of impressions, thoughts, feelings, nature, art, history, all mixed together.
The only free agent. He is not committed, except so much as he desires it. The artist, according to Camblin.
Complete freedom of expression, bound only by your own desires, your own vision.
He also talks about a participatory type of art.
Art that involves the viewer, that invites them to be part of the experience, part of the creation.
Religion. Belief. If I believe in ghosts, I don't have to see one. If I believe it's art, then it is. If I believe that I am completely honestist, then I can't be convinced I'm not. The power of belief.
It shapes our reality, our perception of ourselves, our understanding of the world.
Faith can aid and hinder. What is can discipline? Plus can communication. Those go being Camblin, circa 1968.
The duality of things, the potential for both good and bad in everything.
Cryptic but intriguing. Art is and it isn't, and now everyone knows love Earth's art.
He's questioning that easy equation of love and art. Maybe it's more complex than that.
He talks about really experiencing love. If experienced, no description is necessary, but often making out is confused with love, and feeling good is not always art.
True love, true art is something you feel, something you know. You don't need words for it.
Resist and submit, held in perfect balance. Figure 4, 4 times, into the thing, and 3 times back again. Stay out the last if lucky. This figure 4 idea pops up a few times.
It's a metaphor for life, for the challenges we face, the mistakes we make, the need to find that balance between pushing forward and letting go.
Don't let the demon of being right get in. Flow and think of what you are doing, not what you plan to do. Step off the train of thought.
Let go of that need to control everything, to be right all the time. Just be present, be in the flow.
A bit cynical, but maybe true. Historians love artistic madness when it isn't alive and well and attending meetings.
We romanticize the tortured artist from a safe distance, but in real life, it's often less glamorous.
We can train ourselves to open instead of close the circuits of perception. That's hopeful.
We can choose how we see the world, how we experience it. We can expand our awareness if we're willing to do the work.
Believing and knowing, he says, are different. Mystics know something else. They remain connected to a faith or abandon it, but they have been somewhere, and logic won't make the trip. One must look for the balance of intuition and logic.
There are some things you can only know through experience, through intuition. Logic can only take you so far.
On history. History is believable when it is creative. Awareness can soften the shock. Familiarity allows us to participate. Creativity allows us to go beyond.
It's not just about the facts, it's about how we understand and interpret them.
Cynicism is a type of creativity gone destructive and ego-oriented. Interesting take.
Cynicism can be a form of creativity, but it's turned inward, focused on negativity and the self.
We all are creative, but we lose our magic in understanding everything instead of knowing.
Overthinking, overanalyzing, it can kill the magic.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to know, to feel it.
Pushing up, slowly, as a tree-growing effort of will. See the master heaping up of small things, no blame.
Steady, patient growth. Focusing on the small things, letting go of self-criticism.
Draw, teach, search, reveal, always framed in paradox.
There's always a tension, a contradiction in the creative process.
He was pretty critical of the art world. One must go back to the unknown and naive approach to art. We have been seduced by history, critics, and a very affluent but weird culture. There are no nuances remaining in the world. Identification is the aesthetic. Pass quickly on to the next slide, please.
He felt like art had become too focused on history, on critics, on money. He wanted to return to that pure, unfiltered creativity.
Ouch. A critic is a legless man who teaches running.
Judging something you can't do yourself, it can be problematic.
Innate need to make marks before weapons need and enjoyment as children. Letters and numbers from pictures nonverbal in a time of many words.
Art as a fundamental human need, a way of communicating that goes beyond language.
Intention, forced, studies quantity, not quality.
When you're too focused on the outcome, on the product, the quality can suffer.
A bit cheeky. Artists help historians the same way adults help children look for Easter eggs.
It's like he's saying artists are always a step ahead, leaving clues for the historians to find.
Facility is like the Midas touch.
Technical skill can be a blessing and a curse. It can lead to emptiness if it's not balanced by something deeper.
The emptiness of some art and the efforts of critics and historians to fill it.
Sometimes overanalyzing is just trying to cover up a lack of substance.
The visual arts have finally become non-visual, and then Zen, the aimless mind, focuses itself. That's a shift.
From the purely visual to the conceptual, the intellectual, and then the paradox of Zen, that focused aimlessness.
Good advice. Play the game as if your life depended on it. Why fear and doubt in a harmless course like drawing?
Let go of the fear, the self-doubt. Just create, just play.
Different types of drawings. There are action experiment drawings for discoveries on paper. There are slow analytic drawings for discoveries in the world. There are conceptual drawings for the discoveries in your mind.
Drawing as a tool for exploration, for discovery.
Emphasis on the drawing as nonverbal. Emphasis on the concept as nonverbal.
Art can communicate things that words can't.
The power of haiku. Words are natural in a haiku. The idea is simple in a haiku. The reaction is more.
It's the simplicity, the suggestion that makes haiku so powerful.
One must find his own mystic switch, the rising hackle or the visceral, not this is a truth, but it changes.
That internal compass, that feeling of knowing it's different for everyone, and it can change over time.
Seeing, overlooking, learning through failure, process and awareness of it cannot be failure.
Be present, be aware, embrace the process. Failure is just part of the journey.
Syntax inhibits nonlinear concepts and recreate.
Language can limit our thinking. We need to break free from those constraints to create anew.
The zazen mind during creative activities, hunches, inspiration, and solutions.
When you're relaxed, when you're not trying too hard, that's when the magic happens.
Resist learning. Learn to fail, learn to relax, learn to feel, learn how to really think.
True learning isn't about memorizing facts. It's about experiencing, feeling, thinking for yourself.
I didn't learn anything new, but I know a lot more now.
That feeling of deeper understanding, of things clicking into place.
We have nothing to fear but fear ourselves, and the Zen idea of always being Buddha.
Our own fear is the biggest obstacle. We have the potential for enlightenment within us.
Mirrors are not magic. They just seem to be. Everyone is a mirror, and that is magic. Laugh, laugh, laugh.
The real magic is in our connections, in how we reflect each other.
Magic for power is negative. Magic for seeing is positive. Some seeing is magic, some seeing is intellectual. Intellectual seeing may lead to art. Magic seeing leads to understanding and also to art. This art is more as it is tied to the endless part of life, the other is tied to culture.
Different ways of seeing, different motivations for creating art.
The real seeing has its own property of deception. It becomes a whirlpool of relationships, going in all directions, form the point of entering. It is like trying to look at a scratch on your cornea. Art is the partial retention.
Perception can be overwhelming. Art is an attempt to capture, to make sense of that complexity.
He talks about anonymity as a solution to the artist's dilemma between technique and novelty.
Escape the pressure, the need to be original by creating anonymously.
A lament for the oversimplification of yin and yang mandala.
Complex symbols losing their depth, their nuance.
The symbolists were right that in explaining something it was killed.
Sometimes analysis can take the life out of something, especially art.
Communications, how wonderful and how sad, and fun and art.
The bittersweet nature of connection, the joy of creating.
He wanted his art to keep evolving, different intentions and forms as years and influences pass.
A lifelong process of growth, of change.
The standard sign against the sunset, he says, is like accumulated knowledge. But feeling can't be transferred that way, only through experience.
The limitations of language, the importance of direct experience.
These lists of white and dried elements and dead entities.
Like a catalog of the impermanent, the fleeting.
There are no mistakes, he says. Just do your best. Mistakes are nature's way.
A forgiving philosophy, embracing the process.
Playing with the saying, pride goeth before a fall.
Questioning assumptions, looking for deeper meanings.
Great analogy. Two bits of a hologram arguing about which is the biggest instead of cooperating and looking at the picture with more detail.
We get so caught up in our own little perspectives, we miss the big picture.
The chaos order cycle and the hologram.
The universe as a interconnected whole, always in flux.
Approaching real time and the inevitable necessity.
A sense of something big coming, something unavoidable.
Different views of the universe. Finite, steady state, higher order, all at once.
Always questioning, always exploring.
Being aware of history is like living in past, present, and future, all dreaming of how it works.
Time is a fluid concept, not a straight line.
Time travel at the speed of enlightenment. Beautiful.
Transcending the limitations of time through spiritual awakening.
The hawk and the snake as metaphors for different life paths, and the path of least resistance, which is not always so easy for humans.
Different approaches to life, different challenges.
The way back is long silence, melting rocks, infinite space, eternal time, a point of return, a cycle of action.
Returning to our origins, to that fundamental unity.
A question about Louis Sullivan and his Irish sense of honor.
Personal curiosity, perhaps a connection to his own heritage.
Some crutches are wooden, some are gold. But true freedom is about letting go of all crutches.
Dependence can take many forms, even seemingly valuable ones.
A phoenix frozen in a salty shell, unable to burn itself to a new life.
Potential trapped, unable to be realized.
The empty rib cage full of sand, he says, is revealed meaning. The living being the meaning.
Meaning is not an abstract concept, it's in the experience of being alive.
The cosmos folding back into itself, waiting for the magnificent pulse.
A cyclical universe, always expanding and contracting.
Camblin, 1966, Salt Lake City, Utah.
A specific moment in time, a personal anchor.
And finally, that huge list of quotes from other thinkers and artists.
A glimpse into his influences, the ideas that shaped his thinking.
So much to think about. Okay, let's shift gears. We've talked about Camblin's words, his philosophy. Now let's look at how that translates into his art. Specifically, this painting, First Glimpse of the Ox. It's about that initial moment of seeing something profound, something bigger than yourself.
Exactly. The full title from the YouTube video we're referencing is First Glimpse of the Ox, Truth for the Journey Forward. It's a really powerful piece, visually and conceptually. The book Zen and the Art of Enlightenment Volume 2 describes the colors earthy browns, ochres, muted greens, and these two main forms flanking a bright central space. One form is like a bowl full of energy, and there's this shaft of light, like a path leading to the horizon.
It corresponds to that third stage in the Zen ox herding pictures, right? The perceiving the bull stage.
It does. It's about that first glimmer of enlightenment, that recognition of your true self. The ox isn't fully revealed yet. It's still merging with the landscape, suggesting that it's both within and beyond the material world. The swirling energy in the painting, it's like that rush of emotion you feel when you first have a spiritual awakening.
It's a fleeting glimpse, a reflection almost.
Exactly. The YouTube analysis compares it to a reflection in water or a mirage in the desert. It's a fleeting moment, a beginning, not the end. The ox, even though it's indistinct, emerges from the right side of the painting, intertwined with human figures. It's like that unity between the self and the cosmos, that interconnectedness that Zen emphasizes. And the seeker on the left is intertwined with nature too, showing that we're not separate from the world around us.
And the light in the middle, it's like a bridge connecting them.
It is. The YouTube video describes it as a stream of consciousness, that moment of realization. It connects the seeker and the ox. And it reminds me of that Zen saying, though the truth is near, it is hard to see when you look for it. It is missing when you no longer seek it is there. It's not about finding something outside yourself. It's about a shift in perception.
So this first glimpse is just the beginning.
Absolutely. Both the book and the YouTube video agree on that. It's the start of a much longer journey, a journey that requires discipline, perseverance, and continued searching. The YouTube video mentions the term kino, which is a sudden insight, a crack in the illusion, but not full enlightenment. The ox herding metaphor, it reminds us that you have to keep going after that first glimpse. You have to follow the ox, catch it, and eventually even let go of it.
The YouTube video also brings in the I Ching, which is interesting.
It does. It connects the energy of the painting to hexagram 16, enthusiasm, that initial spark of inspiration. But it also warns against overconfidence at this early stage. And it links to hexagram 20, contemplation, the need for ongoing observation, for deep reflection. And there's a quote from the Tao Te Ching that resonates with this idea. To know yet to think that one does not know is best. Not to know yet to think that one knows will lead to difficulty.
It's about the journey, not the destination.
Exactly. The painting captures that sense of movement, of transformation. Both spiritual seeking and creativity, they require a certain amount of surrender. The artist, just like the seeker, has that initial inspiration, but then the real work begins. The question is, what do you do with that glimpse? Where do you go from there?
It's a question we can all ask ourselves, you know? Have you ever had that first glimpse of something more, something deeper? And what did you do with it? Okay, let's move on to Bob Camblin, the man. His life, his career, how it all fits together.
So Bob Camblin, born in Oklahoma in 1928, he started at the Kansas City Art Institute, pretty standard, but then He gets a Fulbright to study in Italy. That's a big deal. After that, he teaches at a bunch of different places: Ringling, Illinois, Wayne State, in Detroit, Utah, even Rice. But then in '76, he makes a big change, becomes a nomadic artist, travels and sells his art, lives on commissions. It's a pretty radical move.
The book we've been talking about, Zen and the Art of Enlightenment,
Mm.
it focuses on these drawings and writings from 1950 to 74, right?
Yep.
And the bio makes it clear these were never meant to be seen by the public.
Right. So they're raw, they're unfiltered. It's like a direct window into his mind, his process. And the bio emphasizes this. Camblin's art, it went beyond the art world, beyond critics and galleries. It was about connecting with people on a deeper level.
But he wasn't completely unknown, was he? I mean, he did get some critical recognition.
He did. Critics like Charlotte Mosier, she talked about the evolution of his drawing style. Eleanor Freed, she pointed out his fascination with the life cycle, how that shows up in his work. And there was a review in Texas Overview that praised his innovative use of drawing and watercolor. And his own style, it evolved too, from abstract expressionism to this really unique style he developed in the '70s called mouches volantes.
Mouche volantes, what's that?
It's French, means flying flies, basically. It refers to those floaters you see in your vision sometimes. But in his art, it's these intricate patterns of dots and dashes that create optical illusions. He's influenced by artists like Escher and Dali, that kind of thing. And later on, he did these series, Big Al and Descent from the Cross, where you really see his technical skill and his use of symbolism.
He also collaborated a lot with other artists, which is interesting.
It was a big part of his process. He worked with Earl Staley, Joe Tate, under the name B&E Productions. They really challenged the idea of the individual artist, focused more on the creative process itself. He even signed a lot of these collaborative pieces as anonymous.
There's some great quotes about him in the bio from people who knew him.
There are. Pete Gershon called him a mystical trickster. George O. Jackson Jr. said his whole body of work was like one big book, always striving for artistic purity. Earl Staley talked about how much he learned from Camblin, his drawing skills, his composition, his creativity. He was a complex guy, though. Penny Serling said he questioned everything. Carolyn Farb described him as a free spirit, and she told the story behind his Big Al series. And the Southwestern Historical Quarterly, they praised the bio for showing how Camblin balanced his art and his life.
Earl Staley's account is particularly fascinating. They shared a studio, B&E Productions, they did exhibitions together. He talked about Camblin's decision to leave teaching, his later years, how hard it was to organize a retrospective of his work. He even mentions Camblin's Mr. Peanut persona, how he'd give away his possessions. Really paints a picture of a unique individual.
It does. It's like a glimpse behind the curtain, you know? You see the real Camblin, the complexities, the contradictions.
Okay, let's talk about the book itself, Zen and the Art of Enlightenment. What's the heart of it, would you say?
Based on the reviews, it's like a conversation between art and philosophy. It's about everyday life, but seen through this really unique lens with Camblin's sketches and these little snippets of text. It's not about giving you answers, though. It's about asking questions, presenting riddles, making you think.
Transforming the ordinary into something symbolic, something deeper.
Exactly. One review talks about how a figure-4 trap becomes this symbol of entanglement, a tattooed arm becomes a history, a frog becomes Zen wisdom, and his drawings, they're full of paradoxes. A trap that doesn't trap, a structure that doesn't move, a disappearing object that was never lost. They're like blueprints for ideas.
It seems to deal with illusion, with traps, with the things that hold us back.
It does. It explores those ideas both literally and metaphorically. The traps we create for ourselves, the traps the world puts on us, and it makes you think about the nature of reality itself, how we perceive things.
And stillness, that's a big theme too, right?
It is. That sense of peace, of inner stillness, in contrast to the constant noise and movement of our lives. It even questions whether those who seem stuck are actually the ones who found peace. The book, it doesn't give you easy answers. It's more about posing questions, like a Zen koan.
The foreword in Volume 1, it provides some context for Camblin's approach.
It does. It traces the evolution of art, from realism to impressionism to expressionism to abstract art. And it connects that to Zen Buddhism and the I Ching, those ideas of intuition, interconnectedness, cycles. And you see how all those influences come together in Camblin's work. The abstraction, the symbolism, the ancient wisdom, the modern experimentation.
So his art is meant to be an active experience for the viewer, not just something passive to look at.
It is. It's meant to provoke thought, to spark introspection, like a spiritual practice almost. They call it ekphrastic dialogue, where art inspires conversation, interpretation, and it can lead to self-discovery, to deeper truths, the artwork.